Hello, and welcome to Introducing Me. I'm your host, Sarah. I started this podcast to get to know other people and lifestyles while discovering more about myself. Each episode, I will give a new guest a chance to discuss their background, culture, interests, or whatever they want to talk about to help increase all of our own worldviews. Today, I would like to introduce you to Emme. They are an agender author, advocate, and authenticity coach, and they're here to talk about their personal story and the good work that they are doing in their community. So I'm excited to get to know Em and hear more about their life. So Em, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is M. I use they, them pronouns, as you can tell from Sarah's introduction, as well as gender neutral language. And what that usually just means is you kind of just stop at human and let go of all the other niceties that tend to be a bit more gendered. What I tend to do with my time is a little all over the place. My advocacy blends into a lot of my life. So whether that's writing, working on state legislation. I live in Illinois, so I focus a little bit more on those sorts of local, statewide legislation efforts for pro equality. And then I do some coaching for parents of kind of transgender and gender expansive people. So I used to say youth, but honestly, there's folks coming out at all ages, and parents are of all ages. So it's kind of weird to say kids, and then you're like, I'm actually meaning a 35-year-old kid, like adult, that this parent is trying to work with. So I had created pretty much a course, which is being turned into a book called Gender Mindset Reset. And it just helps walk through essentially what my parents had to do and relearning how to integrate me as myself into the story of our family instead of what they had assumed from my childhood and how I used to be referred to. And then along with that, it just kind of wherever I show up, I tend to make a little bit of noise and just make sure that folks in the room are being as inclusive as possible. So that can be anywhere. So that's a little bit about what I do.
And what was it like for you when you decided to break away from the gender binary and, as you said, like your parents' journey? What was that reaction and how did you come to those decisions?
So I think for me, it just got to this point of discomfort that was just untenable. I didn't quite know what I could do about it. It was just like, I just can't do this anymore. And this for me was um, pretending or working so hard to be something I was told that I was, and just really realizing like that's not me. I can't do this anymore. And luckily, it kind of all started to unfold. I found the word non-binary in about 2015, and everything just clicked. It was like, oh my goodness, that's an option. Like that's an option. Well, that's exactly what I am. So like I'm glad. I used to refer to myself like when I would joke and some of these self-inflicted jokes are not necessarily the kindest, right? I'm just like, I'm the worst woman ever. Who allowed this? I'm doing a terrible job. I'm really just missing it, like missing every single point here. And then it's like, oh, it's because I'm not a woman. Well, that makes it so much easier to be like, oh, it's the same as being like, oh, well, I'm not a man, so obviously I would be doing the quote unquote man thing all wrong because that's just not who I am. So that kind of started my own, like, maybe personal alignment, um, and just kind of understanding of myself, and then slowly bringing my family in. Um, I think my dad and my stepmom kind of had an idea through who I was dating that like something was going on, that they needed to update their language, but they were trying to wait for me to bring it up. They're like, hey, do we need to expand or like change the words that we use when referring to who you're dating? And at that time, I wasn't quite ready to talk to them about it. So I said, okay, like, yes. And can we put a pin in this? And I will come back to you when I figured this out a little bit more and found the words to best be able to explain it. So they were like really great and kind of rolled with it as soon as I brought them in. My mom was a little bit more difficult just because our relationship had been so close and a lot of her identity was tied with being a mother of a daughter, And so for her, that was really difficult to try and detangle. And to this day, like we're still working on it, but she's trying. It's just one of those where it's just like, it's a huge mind shift. Um, and I had to do that for myself, but it was a bit easier because I knew what it felt like versus like they do not know what it feels like to be transgender. They don't know what it means like to be agender. They just know what it's like to live their life. So trying to find that bridge of communication of like, okay, how can I explain this for you to kind of understand so you can get into the swing of things and how to refer to me, and that will become more natural as you work at it. So that's kind of like the broader picture of it, with obviously many many details cut out, but that's like the big picture.
Right. So overall, a good sort of situation. So can you talk a little bit about what the word agender means? Because like first for you it was like, oh, non-binary is an option, and now you're using agender.
Yeah, so that was definitely a journey. So finding non-binary was just like, oh, I don't have to pick man or woman because I felt a lot of not woman in my life, but I also was like, I'm not a man. So I felt like, oh, well, I guess I'm stuck here. So once there was kind of like another option, like, awesome, I will just go with that and we'll figure that out. At first, I didn't want to use the word transgender because I felt like I didn't suffer enough to use it, which is, not how labels work. And also just a little bit naive to be like, well, but if that's my experience, then that's a word that I have ownership over if I want it. So I started to use that a little bit more. There was a word in between which was transmasculine, which I started to use a little bit, mostly in like dating situations to try and describe like how to not expect femininity from me in a dating situation, which again, when you're using a word for other people instead of for yourself, it usually doesn't work out very well. But I used that for a little bit until people started to put a lot more masculinity on me than I wanted. Um, and then it was just like, that's what they would describe me as because that's how they saw me, but that's not how I was. So that then transitioned into using agender. I've been using that for several years, which is just like there's no femininity in me. There's no masculinity. It's just M. And how people read me is up to their personal experience. So I can be walking down the street wearing the exact same thing and I'll get ma'amed, and then the next person will sir me. And then we'll kind of go back and forth. And just kind of depending on how they feel on a certain day, like I'll be read differently. And that has nothing to do with inherently who I am. It's just how other people were taught and how other people see people and categorize people. So with agender, it was just me really owning into the fact that I'm just M, and I am my personality traits, I am my history, I am my skills and my talents, but there's not really anything gender related and limiting to what I can do or be. It's just me. So that's kind of where I'm just like, there's nothing going on in here, which I feel as strongly, I think, as I know that as much as other people know that they're a woman or know that they're a man, I know that I am agender. So it was just like the journey to find that word maybe took a couple detours.
Right. Now, do you have any recommendations for like if somebody needs to get somebody's attention on the street and they don't know their name and they don't want to use ma'am or sir, or they just want to go with a more gender neutral term?
Mhm.
Do you have some examples of terms that people can use whether you know the person or not? Because obviously, like if someone knows you, they can just be like, hey,
Right.
um, but if they're running into you and be like, oh, so sorry, and then they like default to sir or ma'am.
So, I mean, usually if you do the excuse me loud enough and directed, and some people can kind of just like pick up. They're like, "Oh, it's not. I think that's me. Let me check." Um, like you works. If I really have to, if there's like lots of people, I'll be like, "Hey, red jacket," because if you're wearing a red jacket, So then that's like just to be like, "Hey, like, I'm meaning to talk to you," but generally I don't use any honorifics at all. So for anyone. I mean, that's not necessarily true. If someone uses honorifics towards me and I can tell that that's what is comfortable for them, I'll use it towards them. I find that in certain communities, like they grew up saying yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. And so I will mirror them to make accommodate them and make them feel comfortable. But for myself, I don't there's no sirs, there's no ma'ams, there's no Mr. and Mrs. blah blah blah. Like, what is your name? That's what I'm gonna call you. But I also think that that comes from a little bit of my background, which is just the egalitarian nature of everybody. Like every person is the same, everyone is on equal footing, and all of those honorifics are kind of intended to show status and to show someone that is like above you. Um, so for me, that's just like as a personal philosophy, as like almost even as a family philosophy of what I was taught. I already didn't have that in me, and then with like agender, non-binary, I'm like, yeah, I don't even have a word that I would want to replace that with. They're just, again, if you don't know the person and you're really trying to get their attention, describe what they're wearing is usually a pretty safe bet. Or if you say, "Excuse me, sir," and they turn around and it's like maybe not a sir, you're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and then you move on with like whatever you needed to do. It's okay if you make a mistake. It's just more just like, "Oops, I apologize," instead of being like, "Sir, ma'am, sir, no, wait." Like, that's just like when you get really like labored with it, that's when it's like, okay, all right, what do you need so I can end this social interaction as quickly as possible? But yeah, so that would be my recommendation. um, and I think that would work on most younger people nowadays, would just be, just to keep it even Steven, and don't even worry about it.
Right. Now, do you find that you run into situations, say, like filling out forms or doing certain things where they're like, no, you must have an honorific, or no, you must list male, female, or very specific things? Are you starting to see a bit more inclusivity in that?
That is the bane of my existence and has been, I think, since I really owned my non-binariness. And I've done some work to try and loosen that a little bit. At least in Illinois, we've done a little bit of a better job, but it's just one of those huge system things with trying to get people to really understand like why this change needs to be made. And then, running into oh, well, the computer system, the way that it was built can't function like that. So we're going to keep that inequality there. It's like, great. For instance, 2 years ago, we did pass a law in Illinois to add the X gender marker onto state IDs. However, it's going to go into effect the next time they update the system, because actually in your driver's license number in the state of Illinois, your gender is coded into it. It's binary code. So depending on the numbers, they can tell if you're flagged as M or if you're flagged as F. So there was no way for them to add a third option. And so it's just like, okay, well, whenever we update the system, it's like, well, how long is that going to take? Oh, probably 3 years, maybe 5. So it's just like, okay, great that the law's on the books, but in the practical application, it doesn't exist. And other forms like marriage licenses, husband, wife, and like switching that to spouse, and then realizing that marriage licenses are actually on a county level. So even if you make changes on a statewide, you have to go county by county. And as you might know, some counties might not be as inclusive or welcoming to that change, or feel the need that they need to have that change because they don't have, quote unquote, those kinds of people living in their community. It's just a whole rigmarole. So yes, but I see those system things. The one time I had a really good interaction though is I was coordinating a date to the Adler Planetarium, which is in Chicago. And part of the ticket process is you have to put an honorific. And there's a drop down menu, and it's a huge drop down menu. It's got like father, it's got admiral, it's got like all sorts of honorifics. But there was no gender neutral honorific. And both me and the date that I was taking would have used the gender neutral honorific if it was required. And I sent an email to the planetarium. I said, "Hey, listen, you live in Chicago. You gotta do better on this. You gotta have either another option or don't make it required." And literally within 2 business days, they updated and they added MX, which is a gender neutral honorific, to the drop down menu. And they said, "Thank you so much for bringing it to our attention. We talked about it and made an immediate change. And we hope to see you at the planetarium soon." Like, it was like so quick. I was like, oh my goodness. But do I have to do this to every single form that I've run across that either requires the honorific and doesn't have the correct one, or again, for me personally, I would prefer the option to not have an honorific, to not make that required. But again, that's another sort of, I would maybe call it alternative viewpoint. Most people are assuming that you want an honorific, and I really don't. And I don't know if people really care about that anymore, if we'll see that change. But yes, so that is a very easy way for me to tell how inclusive a company or a city is, or kind of wherever I'm having to put this information in. If they don't have that there, I'm like, ooh, okay, strike one. Like we gotta start being on our toes here. This is like a yellow to red flag of my experience. So there's just a lot of rules and a lot of people who don't know that there are rules in place or how to fix them. So I think I noticed it. It has gotten a little bit better, but there's just a long way to go. It's everywhere. I mean, it is everywhere. It makes the society is coded based on gender, top to bottom. I think every person living in society can agree the society is like separated by gender. And when you're not even on the list of the possible genders, you really see it. Even when you're just like, oh, I don't really care about that. I'm like, yeah, but now that annoys me. I see it, and now I can't, like, now I don't want to go to the planetarium or like wherever else that I'm going. Like, this is just putting me out for being in society. And it just is, it can be a lot, especially if you're already having a bad day and you're like, no, they won't even let me go to the planetarium. I'm gonna have to misgender myself to go to the planetarium. This is ridiculous. So, but yeah, I think more people are aware of it now, but it's slow changes. It really is.
Yeah, and I think with the honorific thing, as kind of you were saying it like so ingrained, whether it's in the vernacular of like no ma'am, no sir, and even just like on mail that people of an older generation are expecting like even the like Mr. and Mrs. husband's full name, and it's like the Mrs. has a first name and it is not her husband's name. Um, that like there's that part of the generation where you don't necessarily want to offend them by like completely dropping it, but then also as younger generations continue to come up and more people are being aware of the need for inclusivity, then hopefully it continues to get better.
Yeah, I would say that I even know women who are very upset when they get Mrs. I was like, it's Ms. There is no Mister. Thank you. And I'm like, wow. So like this, I really don't think the system is working for many of us, actually. So I think it's okay that we all agree that it's time to phase that out. But I think I know way too much about honorifics because trying to find, okay, well, what's the gender neutral one? And it's MX, and it's pronounced like mix. Listen, this is all French, okay? Like, I still don't know why we're using French honorifics, and like that it's, again, it's a social caste kind of thing, and it just doesn't quite fit in with, and us like being in America. It's just like that doesn't really make sense with what this country is like purported to be. So why are we still doing this? But yeah, so, and I think French even has more gendered bits of their language in terms of feminine nouns and masculine nouns and things like that. So even asking them to be like, "Hey, do you have a neutral option?" Be like, "What? Whoa, 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 whoa!" Like, what is even happening? So yeah, I think I would. I'm hoping that that'll get easier, or at least the people building the systems will get wise to making that not a requirement. But that's such a cultural thing, and every company has its own culture. So we're going up a really steep hill.
And have you been able to surround yourself, whether like in work or, of course, like personal life, with people who are more inclusive and are opening those doors?
So my personal life, I call it my bubble. I'm definitely in a very queer bubble. I have like crafted it so that like all of my friends, use my name and my correct pronouns, and it's a given. It's not even a big thing. So that when I'm just trying to exist as a human and like hang out with friends, I'm not like thinking constantly like, they're gonna misgender me. Oh, how's it gonna go if I have to correct them? Like, because I already know, first of all, it's not going to happen. And if it even did, they know how to politely be like, they, wow, where the hell did that come from? Like that everyone does mess up every once in a while, but I definitely in my personal life, and it does help too when you're doing a lot of LGBTQ advocacy, you tend to be around people who are a little bit more wise to the ways of gender neutrality and proper pronoun usage, but not everyone in the community is like that. Like I get misgendered by other queer people as much as I get misgendered by cisgender and like, straight cis heteronormative people. Like it's not, you don't get a free pass being in the queer community. Like you don't get to misgender me just because like you're a lesbian, say. Like, nope, sorry, like that's not like that doesn't count. Doesn't work at all. So I think in the personal sense, I definitely have. And then in the workplace, I did add my pronouns to my email signature, and some people use them, and many people do not. And it, you know, I have kind of added that into where I've been working. They had previously been using different pronouns for me, and I allowed it, even though on a personal level, I didn't use those pronouns anymore. I've been using they, them for years. But, in a professional setting, especially if I'm like helping customers on the phone, like I'm not going to ask every single customer. If I'm doing consulting work, that's like separate from my coaching. Like if I'm just doing consulting stuff, like I do some financial consulting, then I'm not gonna like think that they're gonna hear my voice and be like, this is they them. Like that's not going to happen. So if they use she her, I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, how can I help you and like get you off my line so that I don't have to worry about it. But in like the corporate business setting, oof, that's a whole thing. People who work really closely with me do a really good job and have their teams, like they're on their teams, be like, Em uses they them pronouns, like they, them, like they'll do the correcting for me if I'm not even in the room. So I would say in the business world, yeah, not doing too great there. And then when I'm doing other advocacy work and other coaching work, when I'm just kind of out in the world, I'm usually the one that brings it up and starts that conversation and asks people to be more inclusive and starts with oh, actually it's they, yep, them. I don't use that word actually. Like, can we not use ladies? Even though, I understand there's a lot of other women in this room, but I'm here. So it's like ladies. And then I'll make a joke like ladies and trying to make it a little funny, but also being like, hey, just checking that, that's not a correct word right now based on who's in the room. So it's a bit of, a mixed bag. And I know it will continue to be like that for the rest of my life. Like, I'm hoping that, like, the percentage will be a bit better and more people will move towards gender neutral language or will know how to navigate it when I bring it up. They're like, oh, thank you for letting me know. I will make sure to use they, them for you going forward. It's just really early. It's really early for that. And there's just a lot. There's a lot of communities and a lot of history to try and shift by asking that of people. So that's why, again, I have my little queer bubble. So there are times where I'm like, nope, I am just going to stay right here and be comfortable and not have to worry about correcting people every 30 seconds about my pronouns. So it does have to happen like that sometimes.
And do you ever get tired of doing that and getting really like down and out about it?
Ooh, I used to. I used to be so worn. I mean, it is extremely tiring. So even now that I feel like I carry it a lot better, if I'm in those spaces too much and constantly doing, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go, you know, have a solo day and not talk to anybody because I just need to recharge and not have to worry about that. There's sometimes where I can't, like, I don't have that luxury to step away and I do have to kind of be in the thick of it for really long. When I was just coming out, like, it was super painful. It was like a slap in the face every single time that it happened. And now it sucks, but I think I'm just like, okay, all right, let's just get through this and get back to where this is not going to be happening. I'll just be removing myself from the situation. So And I think that's also a very personal thing where depending on who it is and where they are on their journey, you're going to have some people who are very reactive. Those are not my pronouns. Stop calling me that. Like they'll get really strong with it because they're pretty much saying like, no, like please see me. That's not who I am. You're hurting me by using those words. And it's like when it's really fresh and really raw, like and you still need a lot of like I would say maybe even external validation. Like, yeah, everyone needs external validation to be like, yeah, I see you. Yep, that's who you are. And you can have as much internal validation as possible, but you're still going to want to be seen as correctly as possible. So, I mean, if you get, I guess, advice for if you run across somebody who is highly reactive and maybe isn't as gracious as I might be about correcting people's pronouns, because again, I've been there, done that. It can be a lot. That's just try and pause, take a breath, and try and understand like how painful that can be for them to hear that word directed at them when that's not theirs. And we don't always do a great job. Like not every transgender person or person who's using different pronouns does a beautiful job every single time of correcting in a kind way. Nor should we have to, but I think there's a lot of, well, why couldn't you just have said that nicely? Why couldn't you just pulled me aside and let me know? And there's just okay, wow, we're splitting hairs. I think we're missing the point. And the point is like, please refer to people as they would like to be referred, and that's just what we do in a respectful and polite society. That's it. Like that's not. It'd be like if you mispronounce my name and I'm like, oh, actually it's M. And if you keep mispronouncing my name, I'm going to start to get really upset. Like, hello, we just talked about this. Were you not listening? Do you not care? Like, what's going on here? So, um, I would say it gets a little bit better, or maybe even just you get better at carrying it. I would say it's maybe more accurate. Not that like externally it ever stops. I think as also again as a non-binary person and using they them pronouns, like a lot of people don't understand that they're using that all the time and that I'm asking them to use it consciously. And I feel like I'm going to be getting resistance for that again for the rest of my life versus like a more binary trans person who's switching either from she to he or he to she. Like that feels maybe a little bit more clear cut or known in the world. Like, yeah, obviously you're here. Yeah, obviously you're a she. Well, I don't think that anyone's going to look at me and be like, yeah, obviously you're a they, them. I hope to one day, but I don't think right now I think people look at me and they're confused. And then they're like, oh, now I'm nervous and I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. And no matter what I'm do, I'm going to be embarrassing myself. Like that's, which I'm pretty much a marshmallow, honestly. Like, I don't like to evoke that kind of feeling in people, but again, that's kind of on them. That's not really up to me um, to super cushion their interactions with me. We'll make it through. It's fine. But yeah.
Right. Well, and the reality is if we can get to a point where, like, yes, if the person in front of you is like confusing you because you're so stuck in a binary, then just default to they, them. And if the person doesn't use they, them, then they will tell you. Now, on that same sort of vein, I think we as a society, or I should just say in general, as a society, attach gender very much to what somebody wears and how
Hmm.
they present themselves.
Hmm.
So, on your journey and throughout your life in general, did you find that you were, I don't know, like when you go to a department store, like trying to stay away from the women's section or like going back and forth, or how do you navigate your physical appearance and expression?
Uh, I feel like most non-binary people with me are that kind of can float in between sections in the store. A lot of us just shop online and we just cut that whole charade out. We're just not even going to be going into Target and finding like whatever it is. We just shop online. But I think for me, understanding that clothes are clothes and it's very arbitrary of which section that they're in. I remember as a teenager buying men's pants and shorts because I needed pockets. And it drove me up the wall that I could not get some decent pockets. Like, do you remember there would be like an inch and a half in the front pocket? I'm like, what is that for? A chapstick? Like a piece of gum? Like, what is supposed to fit in here? And so I would get very annoyed. So I would buy from the men's section because I'm like, okay, well, I need it for utility purposes. That's where I'm going to be able to find it. So because even as a child, I was a little bit more tomboyish. I was a scene kid in high school, so that was my uniform was more like the band T-shirt and then jeans and either Chucks or Vans. Like it was a pretty neutral presentation. So if someone saw me in the men's section, they wouldn't necessarily be surprised. Um, so with that, that's kind of how I navigate it is because you also don't know who people are shopping for. Like maybe I'd be shopping for a loved one who is in that section, and that's why I'm getting clothing from this section or this other section. So with that, it can definitely be a little bit difficult for me. I just think of what's comfortable for me, what's comfortable on my body, and that's the clothes that I buy. So they do tend to be more like a unisex or athleisure, like kind of uh, more comfortable clothing. If I have to do formal stuff, I do like the shirt, jacket, tie, pants. So I guess that could be read as more masculine, but nowadays in fashion, there's plenty of, quote unquote women's suits, or there's lots of tailoring with those pieces of clothing intended for women. So it wouldn't be super out of the ordinary. It is gender non-conforming in terms of, again, we still really equate a suit to being masculine, but it's kind of how you wear it and what you wear, right? Um, and then gender presentation wise, I don't think that, and I think this is definitely a me thing and not necessarily a non-binary thing, or like this is not a rule that you can be applying to everybody who uses that label. Because again, we're not a monolith. No one's a monolith. Every person that you meet is going to be different. But for me, it's always been, yeah, like how am I going to be comfortable and how do I think I look the best? So like once I finally got to like a quote unquote pixie cut, which is just a short haircut, they call it a pixie cut when it's on an assumed woman, right? But once I got to that short haircut, I'm like, oh, no, this feels right. This feels good. And I look good with this haircut. So I will continue getting this haircut, just like everybody else finds a haircut that they like and they just keep having that haircut. So I'm not really thinking, oh, how can I look more masculine or how can I look more feminine? Because again, for me, clothes are clothes and it's more how they fit on my body. So it's like, okay, I like buying from this vendor because the cut is a little bit more generous, or I like this fabric texture. So I guess for me, there are really no rules. It's just, well, what's going to work for me? Which I think is everyone really should be operating under that for fashion and just how you dress yourself. But I don't know that I get crap for not wearing dresses because I think when people look at me, they're like, I can't imagine you in a dress. So it's okay that you're not wearing one. I do every once in a while with my friends, like to show them my old prom photos just because it gets the most hilarious reaction out of them. They're like, oh my God, what is it? And I'm like, I know. It's really weird to see me like that because it's not me. It's not me. And so that's like off putting. So with clothing and with gender presentation too, the lines are becoming more and more blurred, as I think they should be. A skirt is a skirt. It doesn't really matter. Is it a men's skirt or a woman's skirt? Like, no, it's a piece of clothing. It's a skirt. Who's wearing it? Okay, then it's that person's skirt. And many people of many gender expressions rock skirts all the time. And if I see you walking down the street and you're confident, I'm like, I love your outfit. That's awesome. I don't really care if you have a beard or you have short hair or like that's not part of the math for me. I'm just like, yeah, like you really rocking that outfit, or like that lip color looks great on you. Again, doesn't matter what else they look like. It's just like, are you rocking your style? Are you owning it? Are you confident? Um, and I think that's probably maybe even a more youthful take on it. I think that that's again where a lot of the younger generation are going, but it's hard. The older generations who were taught, no, this piece of clothing is only for this person. And if you step outside of that, that is wrong and you're bad. And there's just a lot more moral failing happening about clothing than I think we do today, or at least in my, again, my bubble, my queer community. It's just not a thing. It's, are you rocking it? Are you confident? Are you having a good time? And like that's it.
Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense and is a good look on everything. And I think, anyone can wear a skirt. Just make sure what's under the skirt covers enough so that if you walk through the wind, that you're protected. And as someone who bought pants yesterday, I'm now thinking like, did the pants I end up choosing even have pockets? Because that was not my concern going in. But I did try on a pair of pants that I didn't buy for other reasons, and I was like, these pockets aren't real. So if I do buy these, I will not have pockets.
The women's suiting really drives me mad because I some of my body proportions, I'll buy women's stuff because the proportions are just structured better from the women's section. But the thing about women's suit coats is that again they look like they have pockets even in the suit coats. And then there's no pockets in the suit coats. And then I go and I get a men's suit coat and there's like six pockets. There's like there's like three external and like two internal and then another like side zipper. I'm like, I don't know what all they are needing. Like why we have utility pockets in a suit. I'm not mad because I'm you know able to take advantage of that, but also like the differences of like how did we go so wrong with pockets? Why was pockets the hill that they wanted to die on in terms of like men's versus women's clothing? And if we just really want to call it back, industrial age is when we started to really have pre-made clothing. Before then, all clothing was made for the person. So you could put in as many pockets as you wanted, or it would be whatever size needed to fit your body, and that was that. And you weren't unnumbered. You weren't trying to find your size because your size was exactly what the tailor made for you. So, again, some of these quote unquote rules that we have are not even that old. Like they're not like our great 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 grandparents had these rules, like maybe our great grandparents. But like before then, we worked just fine without having all of these rules and separations. But that's going down a little bit of a conspiracy theory lane that not everyone likes to go down with me. But if you're looking at gender in society, you run into quite a lot of those. So if you ever are interested in kind of how the underpinnings of society and like kind of how we've gotten to where we've gotten to, those are some of the places that you can be looking.
Yes. And you reminded me of the fact that I wore a suit jacket a couple weeks ago, and while wearing it, I was surprised to realize that the pockets on it were actually real, and I just had to like cut the seams. Were they big pockets? I don't think they were that big, but I could have, fit like the chapstick, which in the cold weather is useful, or maybe
Right.
like a packet of tissues or something. Like probably not my entire phone, but at least like a little bit. Now, I wanted to make sure I asked you a little bit about the different advocacy work that you're doing specifically in Illinois and the different sort of like bills and laws that you are helping further. And you've talked a little bit about it, but can you dive into that?
Yeah, this year was a bit interesting because it was almost like 2 years squeezed into one because we lost a lot of time in the legislative calendar for 2020. That little global pandemic that was happening. That impacted what we had kind of planned. So for me, I kind of float in between a couple different coalitions. It just kind of depends on who's doing what in a particular year and if they could use my skills. I do offer a lot of it's called sensitivity reading. And what it is where you kind of get somebody from a population that you don't have experience in and have them read through things just to make sure that the terminology is correct and that we're not like missing anything. So when I'm doing sensitivity reading, a lot of mine is gender based, and trying to be as inclusive and kind of gender expansive as possible. And then I also do like a little bit of sexuality again, because like LGBTQ, like the whole umbrella. But other sensitivity readers could be okay, maybe the Spanish speaking population, just like making sure that things are included for them in a given bill. Like, is this available in Spanish, or like translation services, things that if you don't speak Spanish in the United States, you don't have to worry about because everything else is in English, just as an example. So there was like a group of 4 bills for menstrual equity that happened this past year. And again, using the term like menstrual equity and people who menstruate and menstruators was very important because there are trans men who menstruate, there are non-binary people that menstruate. It's not just women, and making sure that that was included. And part of what we were doing, the bills that were put forth that I kind of read through a little bit, had to do with making sure that there were free period products in all bathrooms. So not just the women's bathroom, but all bathrooms in 6 to 12, because it had just been high school. But as we might all know, or many of us know, that menstruation typically starts to happen in middle school. So it makes sense to have a menstruation products in middle school. So it's like 6 to 12, and then also public universities, because again, they would either only be in the nurse's office or they would only be in the women's room. And again, making them free to make sure that this wasn't a barrier in terms of economic status or availabilially. So that was a huge thing. All that packet got passed. There was also, it was related to homeless shelters was another one, which again was free period products. But it was interesting because a number of people who were, very deep in that work and really wanting to be as equitable as possible, just totally forgot that there are people who don't align with like being a woman and don't use the women's restroom that could potentially use those products, but like maybe in a different bathroom, or that they just would need them in general. So it was cool to see the knowledge base grow. Like, oh, this bill is also helping all these other people that I didn't even think that it could help. So that was really great. That one, all of that packet of bills got through both chambers of the Illinois state and then got signed by the governor. There has been some similar measures in California, but I don't know if they got signed. But so that was kind of a big push for 2021. And then another one, which was a holdover from 2022, was comprehensive sexual education bill. Because I don't think that the sex ed bill in Illinois had been updated since like maybe the 70s. it was that was really bad. And so just making sure that kind of what the kids are being taught and like when they're being taught it. And we're talking not just about having safe sex or whatever. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about like kids even in elementary school understanding the correct anatomical words for things and like what is okay and is not, so that to combat child abuse. If the kids know that's not an area that somebody should be interacting with, that's not like maybe my like without my consent, then they can communicate, hey, I was touched here, instead of, so instead of it being some insidious thing that the kids just don't know about and then they get abused and like just this whole cycle, which with a little bit of education and support from the community could be eradicated, honestly. So things like that where, so we were working with a lot of coalitions with that one. Again, folks trying to eliminate child abuse, trying to update kind of how to be in a relationship and like what is maybe good practices for online, and like so that kids know what sexting is and know that they shouldn't be sending certain photos and that they'll live on the internet forever, and just like certain things are just like this is the knowledge base that these kids need to know now to have a safe life. And this relationships, it is sex, it's knowing, hey, it's okay for women to be attracted to women, and like that for men to be attracted, that there are also expensive genders, families can look this way, all of these sorts of things that all of us wished that we would have been taught in sex ed. I don't know about you, I had abstinence only sex education, which consisted of a little card that I signed that I promised at the age of 13 to save myself until marriage, which like the joke is on them because at that time, technically, like I might or might not be able to get married to my potential future spouse, or me as a person be able to marry anyone. And then these shown lots of gratuitous and graphic pictures of STDs. That's what my sex education was. And so like learning on the fly, especially if you're a queer person, like you barely know about the opposite sex to do with that. And then you're just like, what is sex? And like how to have safe sex and to make sure that you are trying not to transmit STDs, that you're having safe sex, that like you know what to do when things happen. like there's all of these bits that you kind of learn on the fly, and depending on what community in, you might learn, you might not, you might end up dealing with consequences that you didn't want to deal with, that it can be lifelong issues. So it was just, I don't know, I get really riled up about comprehensive sex education. But so we had been working on that, and then the pandemic happened, so then that finally went through, and that's what we were working on for 2021. And again, that did get signed and put into law. um, Unfortunately, we had to take the mandate piece out. So it's not mandated in Illinois, but like if you were to do sex education, like you have to follow the new rules. So baby steps. Sometimes, you start off with a bill that is like your ideal bill, and then I don't know, other people get involved and they're like, oh, we couldn't possibly pass this if it has this in it. And then it gets carved out. And you see this also on a national level where like, it's talking about certain bills that are in Congress and what they want to be spending and what programs they want to be included. And then things get carved out before it even actually becomes like the bill that they vote on, and then ultimately what gets signed into law. So with that, I started doing that right as I was coming out because, again, I could not see myself in society. The fact that like I didn't have a correct gender marker on my identification, and that bothered me, because then that can pose a safety issue where people are like, I don't think that this is correct. Like, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. And it's like, well, actually, according to the law, this is the bathroom I'm supposed to be using, or this is the changing room I'm supposed to be using. And I'm sorry that you're uncomfortable, but like legally, this is where I'm supposed to be. So dealing with that, so that's when I first started, and then now just realizing how much of the broader LGBTQ community, the broader transgender community, is affected by certain laws, and that if I can help get them in a better spot, even if that bill or that law won't ultimately affect my life, that equality is kind of the direction that we're trying to go in, and making society as, I mean, maybe the laws as reflective of society as possible. The one law that I don't think that we really got through this year that will probably happen next year was, if you have certain felonies in the state of Illinois, you can never change your name. And there are a lot of transgender people, then that means that, if they had made a mistake or had the unfortunate experience of needing to do sex work or be involved in the wrong communities via drugs and whatnot in their earlier life, that even if they've come out and they've done their time and they are working really hard in their community, that they will forever not have the correct name and gender information on their IDs, and how dangerous and how painful that can be to live in society like that. So it's one of the most restrictive laws, I think, in the United States regarding that. So we were working on trying to repeal that. I don't think that made it to veto session. I don't think that ultimately got passed. So that will probably go again for this next year. So just things like that, where again, if it doesn't affect your life, you probably don't even think about it. But kind of once you see how many things are like affecting my life or someone else's life, you're like, wow, we really need to make that change. That makes sense. Like we would want to be kind and do that for others. So like let's make sure that their life is um, doesn't have to deal with the level of restrictions that can be causing harm, honestly. I guess that's maybe a very Pollyanna way to look at laws, but that's definitely my idealism comes out, because I have no choice but to be like, yeah, but we can be better. And to be better, we have to do the work. We have to change the laws. We have to like update these, old antiquated thinking that's, these things are causing harm. Like we have the chance every single year during the legislative season to change that, to fix it, to improve like many people's lives. So like, let's do that. I don't know that many people are really chomping at the bit to get into state politics. But a lot of times it's just working with coalitions and other people who really care about it, and working with the lawmakers of your area. Going down to Springfield, which is the state capital, and really talking to people and say, hey, this is important. This is why it's important. Can I count on your vote for this? So that's just volunteering. I'm like, I'm not getting paid for that. I'm just going and causing a ruckus, just I guess for a hobby or some greater sense of purpose that I have in my life, where I'm like, okay, I got some things done for me. Let's get some things done for some other people that can improve their lives. So, but yeah, I'm not every queer person becomes some radicalized, I don't know, social justice warrior or whatever you might want to call it. But I think it's important that there are people doing that like quiet, tireless work of making sure our laws are keeping up with society and trying to do their best so that everyone can just live their lives as unaffected as possible, I think is the goal.
Right. And a lot of what you said makes sense. And even just the point of just because it doesn't affect you doesn't mean that it shouldn't exist. And like even the whole name change with the felony, like not something I probably ever would have thought of, and not, I don't necessarily follow the laws in the state of Pennsylvania to know what does or doesn't exist.
Mhm.
That is just like, it matters. And I will say my sex education was a little bit better than yours.
It wouldn't take much.
Don't remember everything we were taught, but I do know we did learn some things. And I very specifically remember my teacher who was younger having a day where it was kind of like you could ask any question you wanted anonymously in a box. And it was like, there were some fun questions in that class. Um, but that was the early 2000s, mid 2000s, somewhere around
Mhm.
then would have been when I was taking those courses. Um, and so, there's still room to be growing in a lot of these things. And it's good to hear that you are pushing for change, even if you're not getting paid to do it.
Oh my goodness. I think too, maybe even feels better that you're not getting paid because then you're like, no, I'm not swayed by anything really. Like you can't really buy me because there's not really money happening. It's just trying to do better for others. And then also just remembering back to this I guess is not necessarily sex ed. This was in middle school when they split you out between boys and girls and they talk to the girls about menstruation and then the boys about deodorant and please shower because you're going to start to really smell. And then some of them maybe did not take that advice for several years. But just understanding too that like that system is also not beneficial to everyone because then it's like, well, boys should understand about menstruation because they
Mhm.
are surrounded by people in their lives who are menstruating. And it's important for them to understand that and to maybe not feel embarrassed to go in and get menstruation supplies if needed. Like it's just another thing that you pick up at Walgreens or your the pharmacy of your choice. And that that people need to also understand how bodies are working and how they interact with one another. And just to only kind of show certain sections is just a disservice to everybody, and ultimately begets harm and trauma. Like having like the first time that you have intercourse and then realizing that you actually don't know what's going on and how scary that can be, and be like, did I say yes to this? Is this how this is supposed to go? This is not what I imagined in my head. And then just like trying to figure it out as you go. I'm like, we can do better. We can prepare people so that they know when they get in that situation, if they want to remain in that situation, what to do with it, or how to be like, nope, actually, I'm out. I would not like to continue further today. Thank you. I think it's so important, and there's so much other cultural stuff going on too. It's like a consent. What is rape? Like what is the line of when someone can say yes or no, like, hey, if you're intoxicated with any sort of substance, guess what? That's an automatic no. And if you continue on, mm, like you are in the red zone, friend. Like that's not good. But that's such an insidious part of culture where like, oh, but what were they wearing? Or, oh, but they said yes. So like once you say yes, then you can't no take backsies. It's like that's not how that works. You can take backsies whenever. Like the second that you're like, I no longer want to participate in this, you can say no and that's it. But such a small part of culture, like and people understand that. And so there's just a lot of hurt going on. If we could avoid that, like let's do that. I don't understand why we have to continue. I'm also not one of those people that's like, oh well, I suffered, so you have to suffer. I'm the opposite. I'm like, ooh, I had a rough time, and what I would have wished was to know a little bit more, so I was a bit more comfortable, so I could make the decisions that I wanted to make instead of feeling pressured. Like I'm going to try and make it better for the people who are coming behind me. Again, that's probably more of an ethos thing than it is like anything else. It's just like, yeah, I want to make it better for everyone else. I want to help change some of these systems so that all of these young, non-binary, transgender, agender, any sort of gender fluid, any of these gender expansive kids coming up behind me, I want them to not have to worry about seeing themselves in society. I want them to be able to go and take their loved one to the courthouse to get their marriage certificate and not worry about being misgendered on their marriage certificate. Like, I want them to be able to just live their lives unaffected. So if I have to be the one in there making noise and making change and like getting some of these laws fixed and having a terrible time first so I can find what needs to be fixed, then that's fine because I just want these kids behind me to have such a better life. And I think a lot of us can get behind that. It's like, well, yeah, of course I would want like my kids. Like if you have kids, be like, do you want your kids to have the exact same childhood that you did with the same problems? No, you would sure hope that some of them got fixed by the time that these kids are coming along 10, 15, 20 years behind you. So I think that it's just, can you see it? Like, can you see the glitches in the matrix? Can you see where there's these inequalities happening? And I can see it because I'm not part of the math that they had done when they built society and or like Western society in the U.S. So that can be hard when you're like, okay, but I am here and I do exist, and the government says that I don't, but I do. So how are we going to navigate this? So I think that that's probably the driving force behind a lot of what I do. It's just like, how can we just make this better? Like, even if it's just this one small corner, and even if it affects 20 people, I think it's so worth it. If it affects more than that, great. But like, that's enough for me. I don't need to be making these huge changes. I think ultimately they will be huge changes, but you got to chip away at it a little bit at a time.
Exactly. Now, before I start to wrap things up, is there anything else that you would like to share with the listeners?
I would just, I guess, like maybe my advice is to, if you're encountering a person for the first time who maybe you're not as well versed in their identities, that there are some questions it's okay to ask for clarification, like what's your name, what pronouns do you use, what other words can I use to describe you or support you, and then just to kind of get on with it and and they're just normal people, and to not maybe ask super invasive questions that you wouldn't want to be asked personally. But that I think that it's okay to make some mistakes so long as you really try and correct your mistakes, because we're human, we're all going to be making mistakes. But that, like, if you just maybe go with the flow a little bit more, I think that it's just going to be so much better for all human interaction to to act like that. And you can always just, I think that everyone has their own way of doing things. So I think it's okay to be like, hey, can I ask how you feel about this, or can I ask you like what this means for you? Like, what does being XYZ mean for you in your life? Like, what would you like me to know about so that I can be in better relationship with you? I think that it's great to ask those questions of everybody in your life, to not just be making assumptions. I think the number one takeaway for me is that, like, I do treat everyone as their own person. Like, I see you as human, and that's where I stop. Like, I'm not kind of going further down into gender, but it's like, okay, well, what does this human need? Like, what does this human, like, what are they referred to? And, what's important to them? Like, I'm not going to be constantly asking my friends who have expressed a wish to never procreate when they're going to have a kid, because I already know about them that that's not part of their life. So then I'm like, oh, what have you been up to lately? Like, you kind of, depending on who you're interacting with, you should be able to adjust your communication. And so I think if everyone can do that, I mean, everyone approaches it with this agender mindset. So this gender mindset reset is pretty much to try and be able to help folks with the binary mindset, to make a little bit of space for some non-binariness, just to kind of add that extra option, and to ultimately get to this point where you're kind of more in this agender mindset, which is just a person is a person, and like interact with that person as they are and as they need to be, instead of this preset list of rules that don't even apply to everybody in that group always all the time anyway. um and that it's going to be some work. I'm not saying it's going to be easy or that it's effortless, but it's the right work to be doing to be in relationship with other people. So I think that that's probably the biggest takeaway for me, that it's possible. You can totally, add this extra area in your mind for the what ifs and the I'm not sures. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, that the fear of making a mistake and the fear of being seen as a terrible person for misgendering someone, like, okay, but if you apologize and you move on, you're not a terrible person, so we can throw that out. I would say that that's probably the biggest thing. The gender mindset reset, again, is kind of the story of my parents. It's kind of in the parent-child frame, but it can be used for anybody. It doesn't have to be to a child. It's literally anyone that you're in relationship with. It's anyone that you're close to. It could be a friend. It could be a coworker, or it could be just how to be a better person in the world. It just, you don't even have to have somebody in mind quite yet. But these kids coming up are really queer and are really non-binary. Like, I need to need to let folks know it's not going away. It's actually going to be a much bigger part of society and culture. So start practicing now, because you're gonna start really seeing it, especially as Gen Z grows up. And I don't Generation Alpha, which I actually have some nieces and a nephew that are in that generation, little babies. I don't even know for them. Whew. But I would imagine if they're following Gen Z, it's gonna be even a next level. So
Yeah. Now, at the end, with all of my guests, I do ask a random question.
mhm.
So my question for you, since this is a video podcast, I am aware that you have tattoos.
Yes.
So my question for you is either like, what is your favorite tattoo that you have, or like, what is the favorite part? Because you have sleeves, it looks
I
like.
do. I have sleeves, and then I have some other ones in various other places. I would say it's kind of hard because I also get into the question of, once you get to sleeves, is that one tattoo? Like, is that does that count as a whole tattoo, or because most of these were done like like with the intention of it being a sleeve. This wasn't just like piecemeal. So I don't know, like, the overall ethos is like my family, and they're kind of like totems for myself. So I guess even the overall message is probably what's most important to me, because it's just kind of a reminder of like who I am and what's important to me. Although I do have to say, I think I get the most compliments from my lighthouse, which is on my forearm here. I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but I get the most compliments probably for that one. Um, but yeah, I love them, and I'll probably ultimately get the whole body will probably be covered. But just as a quick side note, the reason why I started with sleeves, really, I had got my feet done, but like I really started and I did lots of sleeves. That was actually the first part of my transition, because it was kind of my first rebellion on being a quote unquote proper woman, because, oh, good girls don't have sleeves of tattoos. And I was like, haha, if I have sleeves of tattoos, then they won't treat me like a woman. So I'm going to be able to like reverse Uno then. And especially with dating guys, be like, you know what? If you don't like girls with tattoos, great, because I'm not a girl and I have lots of tattoos. So I'm clearly not the person for you. So it was a good deterrent. But ultimately, yeah, the meanings are kind of the same. And I think I'm going to love them. I mean, hope I'll love them forever, right? They're there until I am no longer here. So, but yeah, that's I'll say I can do like a full little. There's a phoenix on fire there. We got the lighthouse and some. There's a sparrow. We've got the door and ironwork, and then I have bells here. So we've just got a lot of storybook stuff happening. But I love them, and I love talking to people about my tattoos too. So again, not even really super gender related, but just like, yeah, that's just part of Em. Em has lots of tattoos.
All right, that brings this episode to a close. I will be leaving M's Instagram and their website in the description. So both those places will bring you to all of their consulting, coursework, all of that information, along with the gender mindset reset. So that is all there for you to go to check out. And of course, that will also be linked on our website. You can get to the podcast website through the description as well, which will also bring you to our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So I'd appreciate you going and giving a follow to those pages and interacting with the podcast. We always love to get more listeners and have everything shared so that these sort of great episodes can reach a wider audience for more people to hear these stories. And if you would like to be a guest or support the podcast monetarily, that information, of course, is in the description as well. And it's always appreciated to hear from more people. So thank you so much, Em, for spending time with me today, and to my listeners for taking the time out of your day to hear a new story. Until next time, bye.
Bye, everyone.